Hello friends, my name is Urvisha and today I say about the 48 laws of power. The first law is never outshine the master. Judgment. Always make those above you feel comfortably superior in your desire to please and impress them. Do not go too far in displaying your talents or you might accomplish the opposite. Inspire fear and insecurity. Make your master appear more brilliant than they are, and you will attain in heights of power. Nicholas Fouquet, Louis XIV's finance minister in the first year of his reign, was a generous man who loved lavish parties, pretty women, and poetry. He also loved money, for he led an extravagant lifestyle. Fouquet was clever and very much indispensable to the king. So when the Prime Minister Jules Mazarin died in 1661, the finance minister expected to be named the successor. Instead, the king decided to abolish the position. This and other signs made frequent suspect that suspect that he was falling out of favor, and so he decided to integrate himself with the king by staking the most spectacular party the world had ever seen. The party out symbol purpose would be to commemorate the completion of frequent statue. Hook's slave Wickman, but his real function was to pay tribute the attribute to the king, the guest of honor. The most brilliant nobility of Europe and some of the greatest minds of the time, La Fontaine, La, La, Ro, La Rochefoucauld, Madame, Madame D. Madame de Sévigny attended the party. Molière wrote a play for the occasion in which he himself was to perform at the evening's conclusion. The party began with a lavish 7-course dinner featuring foods from the Orient never before tasted in France, as well as new dishes created especially for the night. The meal was accompanied with music commissioned by Fouquet to honor the king. After dinner, there was a promenade through the theatre gardens. The grounds are fountains of wax leaf were to be the inspiration for Versailles. Fouquet personally accompanied the young king through the geometrically aligned arguments of shrubbery and flower beds. Arriving at the garden's canals, the witnessed a fireworks display, which was followed by the performance of Moliere's play. The party ran well into the night, and everyone agreed it was the most amazing affair they had ever attended. The next day, Fouquet was arrested by the king's head musketeer, Arthur. 3 months later, he went on trial for stealing from the country's treasury. Foucault was found guilty and sent to the most isolate prison in France, high in the Pyrenees Mountains, where he spent the last 20 years of his life in in solitary confinement. Louis Xavier, the Sun King, was a proud and arrogant man who wanted to be the center of attention at all times. He could not countenance being outdone in lavishness by anyone, and certainly not his not his finance minister. To success Fouquet, Louis chose Jean Baptiste Colbert, a man famous for his parsimony and for giving the dullest parties in Paris. Colbert made sure that any money liberated from the treasury went straight into Louis' hand. With the money, Louis built a palace even more magnificent than Fouquet's, the glorious place of Versailles. He used the same architects, decorators, and garden designer, and at Versailles, Louis hosted parties even more extravagant than the one that cost Fouquet his freedom. Let us examine the situation the evening of the party as Fouquet presented spectacle on spectacle to Louis, each man magnificent than the one before. The imagine the after as demonstrating his loyalty and devotion to the king. Not only did he think the party would put him back in the king's favor, he thought it would show his good taste, his connection, and his popularity, making him indispensable to the king and demonstrating that they would make an excellent prime minister. Instead, however, its new spectacles its appreciative smile bestowed by the guest on Fouquet made it seem to Louis that his own friend and subject were more charmed by finance minister than by the king himself, and that Fouquet was actually flaunting his wealth and power rather than flattering Louis Xavier Fouquet elaborate the party offended the king's vanity. Louis would not admit this to anyone. Of course, instead, he found a convenient excuse to rid himself of a man who had independently made him feel insure. Such is the fate in some form or other of all those who unbalance the master's sense of a self, poke holes in his vanity, or make him doubt his preeminence. Observance of the law. In the early 16th century, the Italian astronomer and mathematician Galileo found himself in a precarious position. He depended on the generosity sorry, generosity of great rules to support his research. And so, like all Renaissance Renaissance scientists, he would sometimes make gifts of his inventions and discoveries to the leading patrons of the time. Once, for instance, he presented a military compass he had invented to the Duke of Gonzaga. Gonzaga. Then he dedicated a book explaining the use of the compass of the Medicis. Medicis. Both rules were grateful, and through them Galileo was able to find more students to each. No matter how great the discovery, however, his patrons usually paid him with gift, no cash. This made for a life of constant insecurity and dependence. There must be an easier way, he thought. Galileo hit on a new strategy in 1610 when he discovered the moons of Jupiter. Instead of dividing the discovery among his patrons, giving one the telescope he had used, dedicating a book to another, and so on as he had done in the past, he decided to focus exclusively on the Medici. He chose the Medicis for one reason. Shortly after Cosimo I had established the Medici dynasty in 1540. He had made Jupiter the highest of the gods. The Medici symbol, a symbol of a power that went beyond politics and banking. One link on ancient Rome and its divinities. Galileo turned his discovery of Jupiter moons into a cosmic event honoring the Medici's greatness. Shortly after the discovery, he announced that the bright stars offered themselves in the heavens to his telescope at the same time as Cosimo II's enthronement. He said that the number of the moons for harmonized with the number of the Medicis, and that the moons orbit Jupiter as these four suns revolved around Cosimo. The dynasty's founder more the coincidence. This showed that the heavens themselves reflected an ascendancy of the Medici family. After he dedicated the discovery to the Medici, Galileo commissioned an emblem representing Jupiter sitting on a cloud with the four stars circling about him, and presented these to Cosimo II as a symbol of his link to the stars. In 1610, Cosimo II made in Galileo his official court philosopher and mathematician with a full salary. For a scientist, as was the cup of a lifetime. The days of beginning for patronage were over. Interpretation. In one stroke, Galileo gained more with his new strategy than he had in years of beginning. The reason is simple. All masters want to appear more brilliant than other people. They do not care about science or empirical truth or the latest invention. They care about their name and their glory. Galileo gave the Medicis infinitely more glory by linking their name with cosmic forces than he had by making them the patrons of some new scientific gadget or discovery. Scientists are not spread the vagaries of court life and patronage. They too must serve masters who hold the purse strings, and their great intellectual powers can make the master feel insecure, as if he were only there to supply the funds an ugly, ignoble job. The producer of a great work wants to feel he is more than just a provider of financing. He wants to appear creative and powerful, and also more important than the work produced in his name. Instead of insecurity, you must give him glory. Galileo did not challenge the in- intellectual authority of the medics with his discovery, or make them feel inferior in any way by literally aligning them with the stars. He made them shine brilliantly among the courts of Italy. He did not outshine the masters. He made the master outshine all other. Everyone has insecurities. When you show yourself in the world and display your talents, you naturally stir up all kinds of resentment, envy, and other manifestations of insecurity. This is to be expected. You cannot spend your life worrying about the petty feelings of others with those above you. However, you must take a different approach when it comes to power. Outshining the master is perhaps the worst mistake of all. Do not fool yourself into thinking that life has changed much since the days of Louis Louis XIV and the Medici. Those who attain high standing in life are like kings and queens. They want to feel secure in their position and superior to those around them in intelligence, wit, and charm. It is a deadly but common misperception to believe that by displaying and wanting your gifts and talents, you are winning the master's affection. He may think appreciation, but at his first first opportunity he will replace you with someone less intelligent, is attractive, less threatening. Just as Louis XIV replaced the sparkling fruit with the bland cold and as with Louis he will not admit the truth, but will find an excuse to rid himself your presence. This law involves two rules that you must realize. First, you can inadvertently outshine a master simply by being yourself. There are masters who are more insecure than others, monstrously insecure. You may naturally outshine them by your charm and grace. No one had more natural talents than Astor Manfredi, Prince and Fenza, the most handsome of all the young princess of Italy. He, he captivated his subjects with his generosity and open spirit. In the year in the year 1500, Castle Borgia laid siege to Fenza. When the city surrendered, the citizen expected the worst from the cruel Borgia, who however decided to spare the town. He simply occupied its fortress, executed none of its citizens, and allowed Prince Manfred, 18 at the time, to remain with his court in complete freedom. A few weeks later, the soldier hauled Astor Manfredi away to a Roman prison. A year after that, his body was fished the out of the river Tiber, a stone tied around his neck. Borgia justified the horrible deed with some sort of trumped up charge of treason and conspiracy. But the real problem was that he was naturally vain and insecure. The young man was outshining him without even trying. Given Manfredi's natural talents, the prince prince's mere presence made Borgia seem less attractive and charismatic. The lesson is simple. If you cannot help being charming and superior, you must learn to avoid such monsters of vanity. Either that or find a way to mute your good qualities when in the company of a curious Borgia. Second, never imagine that because the master loves you, you can do anything you want. Entire books could be written about favorites who fell out of favor by taking their status for granted. For daring to outshine, in late 16th century Japan, the favorite of Emperor Hideyoshi was a man called Sen no Rikyu, the premier artist of the tea ceremony, which had become an obsession with the nobility. He was one of Hideyoshi's most trusted advisor, had his own apartment in the place, and was honored throughout Japan. Yet in 1591, Hideyoshi had him arrested and sentenced to death. Rikyu took his own life instead. The cause for his sudden change of fortune was discovered later. It seems that Rikyu, former present and later court favorite, had a wooden statue made of himself wearing sandals and posing loftily. He had this statue placed in the most important temple inside the palace gates, in clear sight of the royalty who often would pass by. To Hideyoshi, this signified that Rikyu had no sense of limits, presuming that he had the same rights as those of the highest nobility. He had forgotten that his position depended on the emperor, and had come to believe that he had earned it on his own. This was an unforgivable miscalculation of his own importance, and he paid for it with his life. Remember the following: never take your position for granted, and never let any favors you receive go to your head. Knowing the danger of outshining your master, you can turn this law to advantage. First, you must flatter and puff up your master. O- Overt flattery can be effective but has its limits. It is too direct and obvious and looks bad to another curious courtiers. Discreet flattery is much more powerful. If you more are if you are more intelligent than your master, for example, seem the opposite, make him appear more intelligent than you. Act naive, make it seem that you need his expertise. Commit harmless mistakes that will not hurt you in the long run but will give you the chance to ask for his help. Masters adore such requests. A master who cannot bestow on you the gifts of his experience may direct rancor and ill will at you instead. If your ideas are more creative than your master's, ascribe them to him in as public a manner as possible. Make it clear that your advice is merely and echo of his advice. If you surpass of surpass your master in wit, it is okay to play the role of the court jester, but do not make him appear cold and surly by comparison. Tone down your humor if necessary, and find way to make him him seem the dispenser of amusement and good cheer. If you are naturally more sociable and generous than your master, be careful not be the good that blocks his radiance from others. He must appear as the sun around which everyone revolves, radiating power and brilliance, the center of attention. If you the trust into the position of entraining him, a display of your limited means may win you his sympathy. Any attempt to impress him with your grace and generosity can prove fatal. Learn from Frequent or pay the price. In all these cases, it is not a weakness to disuse your strengths is your strengths if in the end they lead to power. By letting others outshine you, you remain in control instead of being a victim of their insecurity. These will all come in handy the day you decide to rise above your inferior status. If, like Galileo, you can make your master shine even more in the eyes of others, then you are God sent, and you will be instantly promoted. Image the stars in the sky. There can be only one sun at a time. Never obscure the sunlight or reveal the sun's brilliance. Rather fade into the sky and find ways to heighten the master star's intensity. Authority. Avoid outshining the master. All superiority is audience, but the superiority of a subject over his prince is not only stupid, it is fatal. This is a lesson that the stars in the sky teach us. They may be related to the sun and just a brilliant, but they never appear in her company. Reversal. You cannot worry about upsetting every person you come across, but You must be selectively cruel. If your superior is a failing star, there is nothing to fear from outshining him. Do not miracleful. Sorry. Do not be merciful. Your master had no such scruples in his own cold-blooded climb to the top. Gauge his strength. If he is weak, discreetly hasten his downfall. Outdo, outsmart him at key moments. If he is very weak and ready to fall, let nature take its course. Do not risk outshining a feeble superior. It might appear cruel or spiteful, but if your master is firm in his position, yet you know yourself to be the more capable, bide your time and be patient. It is the natural course of things that power eventually fades and weakens. Your master will fall some day, and if you play it right, you will outlive and someday outshine him. So, guys, this first law is never outshine the master. So, go on next law. So, next law is never put too much trust in friends. Learn how to use enemies. Judgment. Be wary to friends. They will betray you more quickly, for they are easily aroused to envy. They also become spoiled and tyrannical. But hire a former enemy and he will be more loyal than a friend because he has more to prove. In fact, you have more to fear from friends than from enemies. If you have no enemies, find a way to make them. Transgression of the law. In the mid 9th century, a young man named Michael III amused the throne of the Byzantine Empire. His mother, the Empress Theodora, had been banished to a nunnery, and her lover Theocritus he had been murdered. At the head of the conspiracy to depose Theodora and enthrone Michael had been Michael's uncle, Burdus, a man of intelligence and ambition. Michael was now a young, inexperienced ruler surrounded by intriguers, murderers, and profligates. In this time of peril, he needed someone he could trust as his counselor, and his thoughts turned to Basilius. His best friend Basilius had no experience whatsoever in government and politics. In fact, he was the head of the stable, but he had proven his love and gratitude time and again. They had met a few years before when Michael had been visiting the stables just as a wild horse got loose. Basilius, a young groom from present Macedonian stock, had saved Michael's life. The groom's strength and courage had impressed Michael, who immediately raised Belicius from the obscurity of being a horse trainer to the position of head of the stable. He loaded his friend with gifts and favors, and they became inseparable. Basilius was Basilius was sent to the Finnish school in Byzantium, and the crude present become a cultured and sophisticated 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 crude courtier. Now Michael was imperial and in needed to someone loyal. Who could he better trust with the post of Chamberlain and chef and chief counselor than a young man who owed him anything? Basilius could be trained for the job, and Michael loved him like a brother, ignoring the advice of those who recommended the much more qualified brothers. Michael chose his friend. Basilius learned well and was soon advising the emperor on all matters of state. The only problem seemed to be money. Basilius never had enough. Exposure, exposure to the splendor of Byzantine court life made him avaricious for the perks of power. Michael doubled, then tripled his salary, enabled him, and married him off to his own mistress, Urvisha. Energy, keeping such a trusted friend and advisor satisfied was worth any price, but more trouble was to come. Bardas was now head of the army, and Basilius convinced Michael that the man was hopelessly ambitious. Under the illusion that he could control his nephew, Bardas had conspired to put him on the throne, and he could conspire again, this time to get rid of Michael and assume the crown himself. Basilius poured poison into Michael's ear until the emperor agreed to have his uncle murdered. During a great horse race, Basilius closed in on Bardas in the crowd and stabbed him to death. Soon after, Basilius asked that he replace Bardas as head of the army, where he could keep control of the realm and quell rebellion. This was granted. Now Basilius' power and wealth only grew, and a few years later, Michael, in financial straits from his own extravagance, asked him to pay back some of the money he had borrowed over the year. To Michael's shock and astonishment, Basilius refused with a look of such impudence that the emperor suddenly released his predicament. The former stable boy had more money, more allies in the army and senate, and in the end more power than the emperor himself. A few weeks later, after a night of heavy drinking, Michael awoke to find himself surrounded by soldiers. Basilius' watch as they stabbed the emperor to death. Then, after proclaiming himself emperor, he rose through the streets of Byzantium, brandishing the head of his former benefactor and best friend at the end of a long peak. So guys, so go on next part to tomorrow. Thank you.